India's decision to distance itself from the Su-57 program reflects a growing strategic, technological, and geopolitical divergence from Russia, especially in the wake of recent global developments and Russia's increasingly fragile defense industrial base. Despite Moscow's late-stage efforts to repackage the Su-57E with promises of full technology transfer, source code access, and joint production opportunities, New Delhi appears resolute in moving away from dependence on Russian defense offerings, particularly on a platform as unproven and problematic as the Su-57. The Su-57 has long been advertised by Russia as a fifth-generation stealth multirole fighter, but in reality, it remains closer to a developmental platform than a combat-ready operational aircraft. More than 2 decades since its conception, the aircraft's production numbers are minimal, with only a handful of units delivered to the Russian Air Force by mid-2025. Its most critical upgrade, known as the second-stage engine, is still not fully operational. The current aircraft still flies with older AL-41F1 engines, which fail to deliver the power, fuel efficiency, or stealth characteristics required for a true fifth-generation profile. Indian defense officials have been well aware of this, and it is a major reason they continue to see the Su-57 as technologically inadequate. Stealth performance is another weak point that undermines the Su-57's credibility. Russian claims about its low radar cross-section and sensor fusion capabilities have been met with widespread skepticism from independent analysts and military observers. The aircraft's design includes several protrusions and features that are considered radar-reflective by Western engineering standards. Moreover, its sensor fusion, networking architecture, and battlefield data integration remain immature. This lack of credible stealth and systems integration is viewed by India as unacceptable, especially when preparing for high-tech warfare scenarios involving long-range surveillance and electronic warfare. Beyond performance gaps, the Su-57 is deeply entangled in Russia's weakened industrial and logistical base. The Russian defense sector is currently overstretched, both due to sanctions imposed after its continued military actions in Eastern Europe and due to its over-reliance on outdated manufacturing infrastructure. Component shortages, disrupted supply chains, and a restricted access to microelectronics have slowed the aircraft's production rate to a crawl. These systemic issues have ripple effects across the entire Su-57 program, increasing costs and delaying deliveries, both of which are red flags for any potential foreign buyer, especially India, which has already experienced delays in Russian-origin projects such as submarines and missile systems. Geopolitical realities further damage the credibility of the Su-57 as a viable option. Russia's deepening defense partnership with China over the past 5 years has led to a shift in Indian strategic calculus. There is growing concern among Indian defense planners and intelligence circles that Russia will increasingly prioritize China as its main customer and strategic partner. This shift raises the possibility that Moscow could limit critical support to India in the event of a border escalation with China. More alarmingly, reports from Indian defense analysts have highlighted the presence of Chinese-origin electronic components and subsystems within Russian aircraft, including the Su-57. This represents a serious risk for India's operational security, as incorporating any such components could introduce backdoors or technical vulnerabilities that compromise mission integrity. Politically, India must also navigate the threat of U.S. sanctions under CAATSA. Countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act, this legislation penalizes countries engaging in significant defense transactions with sanctioned Russian entities. Although India received a temporary waiver in the past for legacy systems, any future purchases, especially a multi-billion-dollar platform like the Su-57, would come under serious scrutiny. Financial institutions could face pressure, defense companies might be blacklisted, and India's broader access to Western technology could be endangered. These risks are not theoretical, they have already impacted procurement talks in the past, and Indian policymakers are unlikely to endanger broader strategic ties over a single aircraft deal. Another critical issue is India's increasing insistence on complete control over its defense platforms. Over the past decade, India has transitioned from being a passive buyer to an assertive partner that demands full sovereign rights over mission systems, avionics, and weapons integration. This includes access to software source code, the ability to modify combat algorithms, and the freedom to integrate indigenous systems such as radars, electronic warfare suites, and precision-guided munitions. While Russia has recently claimed to offer such access with the Su-57, this promise is seen as last-minute and reactive. India's prior experiences with Russian hardware, especially delays in co-development programs, reluctance to share sensitive design data, and a lack of transparency, have severely eroded trust. The history of India's previous engagement with the Su-57's earlier development phase also plays a major role in this current rejection. India was originally a co-developer in the fifth-generation fighter aircraft (FGFA) program with Russia, based on the Su-57 platform. However, India withdrew from the project due to unresolved issues related to performance standards, production timelines, and cost sharing. That decision reflected not only technical dissatisfaction but a loss of strategic confidence in Russia's ability to deliver a cutting-edge, future-proof fighter. Despite Russia's claims that the Su-57 has since matured, India has not seen enough credible progress to re-engage. In the current defense environment of 2025, India is reorienting its airpower strategy around future-proof solutions that emphasize indigenous manufacturing, software sovereignty, and geopolitical autonomy. The Su-57 fails to meet any of those criteria. Even if the aircraft were technically adequate, which it is not, it still suffers from an origin that places India in a strategic bind with a declining partner whose alliances and interests no longer align with New Delhi's national security goals. Thus, while Russia may continue to aggressively promote the Su-57, the reality is clear: India has moved on. The aircraft is no longer viewed as a credible platform, and any proposal surrounding it is seen more as a desperate attempt by Moscow to salvage export prospects in a deteriorating market. India's defense future lies elsewhere, on paths that ensure technological independence, operational superiority, and strategic clarity. The Su-57 represents none of these.